soul. Hot topics from the soul.
Welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Parker Hagan, and I'm so delighted to be here. We're still in Woman Empowerment Month, and I have my co-host with me. Can't hear you, Dr. J.
You can't hear me at all?
Okay, now I hear you.
All right. Okay. So, Dr. Dara Thicklin, so glad to be with you here on this great, tremendous Tuesday. And I'm excited about today's show because of the fact, as we're still in Women Empowerment Month, it's nothing better than understanding the most important component in our lives is relationships that we're in, and how do we foster, if you would, healthy relationships. So I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. And I have a wonderful, magnificent queen to talk with us today. Her name is Noel Roberts, and she's an entrepreneur, a businesswoman extraordinaire, and she's in the medical field. She has a nonprofit, the Noel Roberts Foundation, and I'm bringing her to the stage so we can talk with her right now. Noel, how are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm amazing. I am
Hello.
amazing. How are you?
Good.
Great.
Well, you are a friend to the show, and
Yes.
I'm so glad you took time out of your schedule to join us and to talk about how we foster healthy relationships. I know you know all too well about that
Well,
as a female and going through situations in life, and you're a domestic violence advocate. Can you share a little bit about your story to the audience?
absolutely. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I call myself a domestic peace advocate. I married young and was in a very unhealthy relationship. And I stayed in that relationship for 9 years. And I just was tired. I didn't know what to do, where to go. I had 3 children and was 6 months pregnant with the last one. No money, no finances, no nothing. My husband took care of everything. So I was isolated. I didn't know how to move forward, but I just knew that I could not do that anymore. And I just prayed to God, and I was like, you know what? If you could provide for birds, you could provide for me. And I just decided that I wanted out, and I got a divorce. And outside of the divorce, birth, the best thing of my life, outside of my children, was the best thing of my life. And that was the nonprofit.
One of the things happen is out of adversity is what births us into our purpose most of the times.
Absolutely. And I had no idea, but when you're going through it, you're just like, why is this happening to me? You feel like it's the worst thing ever, but we don't know that we're growing through something, because it made me who I am today. And I would not change that path for anything. I know it was bad at that time, but I'm speaking from a healthy space. So I wouldn't change it, because it's allowing me to do so much in the world and help others with the same situation.
So you were in this marriage for 9 years, and you looked like you was on roller skates when you're getting out. You had 3 kids, and you were 6 months pregnant with the other. One of the things that you said that I think is so important, that when people start talking about navigating relationship, is the dynamics. The dynamics were the fact that he paid all the bills, all those things were there. And for some people, hearing those type things sounds, boy, that's great. I wish I had a man to pay all the bills. But in many ways, that could be a vice. That could actually be a vice.
It actually is.
When there's abuse that is there. So, in what role do you think that played for us as the length of time that you stayed in it?
It played a huge role, because I came from a working family. My entire family are a family of entrepreneurs. So all I knew, even at 12, was hustle. We were all working. So when I was asked by my husband to stop working, it was like, what is that? Like, who does that? Like, why would I do that? And he was like, his excuse was, you're pregnant. I want you to stay home with the children and raise the children. And the mindset when I came into this relationship, which is very important, I came from a household that was full of domestic violence, physical. So that was my understanding of domestic violence. I saw physical altercations repeatedly. So I knew that I wanted to rush and get married and create my own world where it wasn't that. So he didn't do that. And he knew that I wasn't going for that. So he was, I don't even know if he was intentional. I never asked, but he didn't do that. He never laid a hand on me. But what he did was, don't go to the store. I'll do the shopping. Don't work. I'll pay for everything.
Control, manipulation.
Yeah. And my girlfriend, I was 20 years old. So my girlfriends were like, oh my God, you got the world. You don't have to come out here and work, and you don't have to do anything. And I'm like, I am dying in here. I'm creative. I need to be doing things. And at first I thought it was, oh, that's so cute. He's just, but it's a slow way to control and isolate everything. And it got so controlling to the point where people would call me and they would say, I would see him on the street like, hey, why didn't you call me? And they would say, I'm not calling you. Your dad asked me all these questions. I didn't know he would unplug the phone wherever room he was in, he just had access to the telephone. He could only hear it ring. Wow. So I never told him that. I never told him that I knew that. But what I just did was like, just don't call no more. I'll call y'all. Yeah, but it was a big shift, and it played a huge part in me staying, because when you don't have money and you have children, you're like, how am I going to make it? How am I going to make it? And so you get dependent. You get, it's a comfortable pain. You get dependent and you get used to it. So you stay. And that's, a lot of women stay for that and stay out of fear because they don't know what to do.
Absolutely.
Well, mine wanted me to work, and he was abusive. So
he playing.
I paid the bills. I did all these things.
Are you serious? Wow.
Yes, I worked. I took care of the children. I took care of him, do whatever bill needed to pay. And,
he wanted role reversal.
I was the breadwinner.
He wanted role reversal.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the different strategies of oftentimes with batterers. It's the fact that depending on who you have, they kind of, if you would, they kind of retrofit or acquiesce to the personality. So the fact, because you came from an entrepreneurial type of background, you was this hustler, the best thing to do was to isolate you. You get the responsibility of the kids, so therefore you didn't have as much movement and motion. And in your case, Dr. Val, here it is. He realized that, listen, he really meant I can't make it without you. So he needed you to work.
Yeah, so he couldn't. He did it mentally, but then he went physical because of the fact that I was a worker, I was a hustler, I was a mother. So I did everything I needed to do, and he wanted to control the dynamics as well. Wow.
Yeah, and that is so important to keep in mind, because the fact that the heart of domestic violence is power and control. It's simply, whether we're doing that's through manipulation, if we're doing it through, extortion, or we're doing it through what we call gaslighting, because that emotional gaslighting plays on people's mind. And all of a sudden, what are you talking about?
Did I do that? Yeah.
Yeah. And so that happens. And in a day and time where people put so much emphasis on physical abuse, it is so important that people recognize, the emotional mind games is really where that's where the foundation is laid. And often I would tell people, long before a perpetrator beat you up, they beat you down with their words and their tactics. And that's important to recognize.
Absolutely. And that's why when people, it triggers me when people say, can I take a piece of your brain, or can I pick your brain? I'd be like, they don't mean no harm, because that's what they do. They pick little pieces. Oh, you stupid. Oh, look at you. Like, they say little things that just pick at you and pick at you and pick at you until your self-esteem is so low. And the next thing, you're suicidal. Or, you know what I mean? And it's small things. It happens over time. It's not just oh, I'm saying this one time. It's an overtime thing.
Yeah.
It's a process. It literally is a process. And once they know they have you that way, then it's the world is theirs. The world is theirs to play with you until you're strong enough to stand up and say enough. Yeah.
Okay, and one of the reasons why I thought it was so important for you to come and share this Woman Empowerment Month is how to win, because you didn't stay stuck just because you had little children. I had 4 children, so I could identify with you, but I wanted the audience to know that there's women every day that have pressed through what I've went through and have won and wanted to not just stop there by getting out, but also help empower other individuals. Can you share what that transition mentally was for you?
Absolutely. And I'm going to share well, on Tuesdays, Iyanla Van Zant used to come on Oprah. And I used to listen to her every Tuesday, every Tuesday, every Tuesday, just putting a little bit of light in my life. And then I would go in the basement and listen to songs of the Key of Life. And I would just pray, like, God, I can't stay here no more. And I used to listen to Joy Inside My Tears. And then one day I was like, okay, he did something that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was like, enough. So I got the locks changed. I got him out. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't care. I didn't care about moving forward, how I was going to move forward. I just knew that I would make it. So because he paid all the bills, I didn't know how to pay bills. I was 26 at this time. I didn't know how to pay bills. So the electric bill came in the mail and it was like a red line on it. So I called and they was like, shut off. So this woman was my angel. I called the electric company and I said, hi, why are you shutting off my electric? And she said, because baby, you ain't paid the bill. And I said, my husband ain't paid the bill, just like that. And I don't know what it was in her that she heard in me. She said, baby, go get pencil and paper. And I'm about to give you some numbers. And you're going to call all of these numbers and they're going to help you. Because if he ain't paid electric, he ain't paid the gas and he ain't paid the phone. She gave me resources for everything on how to keep your utilities on, where to get food, where to get clothing. And I was just crying. And I said, how can I help other women from not going through this? And she said, start a nonprofit. This is the electric lady, the customer service. And I said, what's a nonprofit? And she gave me the IRS and she said, go here and ask for this paperwork. I did. And then 6 weeks later,
Wow,
I had this packet and I applied for the paperwork and I filled it out. I just closed my eyes and envisioned what I would want for a woman that was going through my situation. I wrote all of that on that application and I sent it in. And 6 weeks later, I had this 501c3 that I really didn't know what it was. I just knew I could get stuff to help women.
yeah.
And that just opened my world up to so many amazing people and helping thousands of families to get through and create a roadmap to create a better life for themselves. But it was possible. Scared, but it was possible.
And it's interesting because the fact, this is what we often say to people, is that you don't have to be a domestic violence expert or a counselor, but you can be attentive enough to recognize signs of, you can hear that somebody's in distress or somebody's in a situation, and you can give them advice. It started all with an unpaid light bill, you know.
Yes, and I wish I knew her name. I said she must have been an angel because she was very informative just to be the Pico lady, the electric company lady. And she just birthed something in me and just directed me from that phone call.
That's why I tell individuals when they're on jobs, especially if you're a believer, it is our responsibility 24/7 to nourish and empower individuals to embrace a larger vision of themselves, regardless of what job you have. You can be a light to someone. And that's what that young woman was. She was that light, that angel to lead you out of the darkness.
Yes. I wish I knew her name, but
God
knows her name.
Yes.
She was your side.
She went beyond her job description. And that goes back to what you're saying, Dr. Val, is the fact that we have jobs for a reason. But understand God is really our source. The job is just a resource. However, if we allow him to use us on our job, we'll be amazed of the people's lives that we can change. I don't even like the job, but I'm in the right place because I have access to people. I'm in the right place because people are calling in the midst of distress. But the other part was this, is that you had enough.
Yeah.
You had enough.
You got to be fit to be tied. That's what the old folks say. You got to be fit to be tied.
Or in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Right?
Yes.
Right. And so with that, it was almost like something was lit inside of you. That was something that ignited. And most people don't turn the ship around that quick. But you had dealt with enough. Enough is enough. And you understood the position that it put you in as a woman. Imagine other women that may not have that drive, whatever. That is why when we start talking about grassroots type of organizations and entrepreneurial act, it is generally birthed out of something. It's birthed out of pain. It's birthed out of us recognizing that I want to give something. And you were able to get out of this abusive relationship, this abusive marriage. Now launch it out on your own, and before you even get your shoes tied good, you was already trying to help other folks.
Yeah. And
now that is a lot right there.
Yeah, and it was and I think all that alignment of me being tired and then me getting that late bill, not knowing how to pay it, and speaking to this woman. And a neighbor on the block had a store at the corner and it was empty, and he donated the space to me. His name's Angelo Russell. He donated the store space to me, and I just was like, things was just opening up for me. I was able to give out 100%. Yes, that's why I knew that was what I was supposed to do. And I don't care what happens in life, this is my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Nursing has helped me expand on how I'm doing it, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be in service.
So what made you go into the nursing field?
Watching a family member be abused and always running to tend to help them with their, wounds and everything. I just thought that I was supposed to help. I thought that was supposed to help. And I thought the best way was to be in the medical field. So I know exactly what to do. Because I was a child. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that there's blood, stop it or wipe it, or you know what I mean? So that made me love nursing. That made me love the medical field. So I got in the medical field to really train and learn. And I started with emergency medicine in the ER, and seeing the trauma of domestic violence victims come through that door was enough. It was enough to make me stay in nursing and really love it. And then now I'm to the point where I am on the other end of it. Once the woman has gone through the healing process, I want to help them with their roadmap. Just like that woman electric lady helped me with the roadmap on what should I do. Now you've been through this. Now how can you move forward, and what can you do now? So I'm on the wellness side and really helping restore healthy relationships and self-love with women.
Absolutely. You go through mental trauma. People don't realize that there is a mental trauma you go through. And, people talk about mental illness.
Yeah.
Well, you go through that process because you're like in this bubble where you're waiting for it to pop. And then because sometimes you've been so mentally drained and worn down to you don't even know how to pop it yourself.
Yes.
Somebody to help from the outside come in and help set you free. But a lot of times people can't read those signs unless you say something, because people aren't equipped. And a lot of times they're going through mental stresses themselves till they don't want to be bothered with what you're going through because they're trying to deal with their own baggage. But you wanting to deal with mental wellness through the Noel Roberts Foundation, helping women from the inside out. and then empowering their mind and their spirits, and then fortifying them with healthy resolves so that they can stay strong. Because I always tell individuals, ask for help not because you are weak, but you want to remain strong.
Yeah. And for those, and to touch on your point, and you made me think about a time, because I didn't even know I was in a mentally abusive relationship until I went to this sisters gathering, and I had my daughter. She was like 3 months old, and everything the woman talked about, I would stop and call my husband and say, "Well, she talking about this now." And then when we would eat, I will call and say, "Well, we eating broccoli, rice, and soup or something like that." And the woman that had the event, this was like my first sisters gathering that I've been out since for like in 3 years. And she said, "You can't come to my house anymore." And I said, "Why?"
Wow.
She said, "Because you're abused." I said, "I'm not abused. Don't nobody hit me." And she said, "Baby, you're abused." And that was the mirror in my face, that I was like, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And then I just started paying attention to my behavior, So some people don't even know that they're in an abusive relationship until somebody has to point it out. Like, "Baby, that ain't normal. That's not normal." And
You're
then
exactly
once
right.
you know what I mean? And then once you know, it's your duty to try to figure out, like, what is going on here? What is really going on?
Unfortunately, I think your point is so valid. And one of the reasons people don't recognize they're in an abusive relationship, because oftentimes what an abusive relationship is defined as to them. And so people look for the black eyes, they look for those type of things that are happening. And the reality is that many people are in the midst of a relationship that's already gone abusive because it's toxic. The relationship is very toxic. It's very controlling. Your nerves you're always on the edge with your nerves. You're always finding yourself having to backpedal and regress and trying to straighten things out. And you're already going through the mental abuse. You're already going through those. And it actually grooms you.
You're being conditioned. You're being
Exactly.
conditioned on how to relate to this person. And the longer you stay, the more comfortable you get. Because you're like, "Oh, that's how they are. I just know that's how they are." But then you're stuck. Then you can be stuck.
Yeah. And you come to accept it. You start accepting it. It's acceptability, and you feel that way. And yet it's still, in order to navigate. Now, I thought you said something that was so important, that once you now recognize this is what I am in, now you have a responsibility to do something about it.
Yeah.
Navigating, as we're saying, you cannot foster a healthy relationship if you don't know how to navigate out of what you're in. And if what you're in is being this cage to you, sometimes you don't get out by yourself. Sometimes it is having that support system. Sometimes it is knowing where to turn to. And it's so important to be able to do so, and that it's not the end. And I like what you said, because some people, some victims, when they're coming out of an abusive relationship, they just glad to get out. I'm out. I'm done with it. They don't want to say nothing to nobody else. They ain't trying to be no advocate, no activist or anything. But it takes something inside of you that says no. It's almost like, I've got to go back and help my sisters. I got to go back and help someone else.
Harriet Tubman in me.
Exactly.
That was.
Exactly. And that's important. And so there's life after abuse. There is.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So yes.
It takes healing.
One of the challenges in exit strategies is the fact that people don't know where to go, and they don't know what to do. And because they've been in this box, in this bubble, that's why they stay. That's why I stayed, because I had no other resolve. But me having my exit strategy, I didn't have one. So I was like you, didn't have no money, didn't have, no place to go. But one thing I had me was, because I was my greatest resource. And one thing I could always do was work with these hands. And even from middle school, getting report cards with C's and D's saying that girl talked too much. Look how I'm using my voice now.
Yes. I told somebody that recently, like, they told me I talk too much as a child. They told you that, they've been telling you you're a coach, you're a speaker, you're a motivator. So that's what we are. That's what we are.
And you know, and so there are individuals that are listening right now that you know, we're talking and we're talking about levels of abuse, and they're saying that's me,
Mm.
and they want to be able to win, and they may like the situation they're in but don't like the circumstances. So how do we help them position themselves where they can stand up in their own power? Because a lot of times, you know, people will look on the outside and say, girl, I wouldn't take that, or dude, that woman is handling you. Why are you letting her do you like that? But then when you need help, you call that cell phone, they not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I understand the environment, and that's why I created my foundation, the Soul of Woman, to help with situations like that. Because 98% of the time, the person that needs to evacuate the situation has no money because the perpetrator has controlled and manipulated that whole
Yeah.
situation. So, and Dr. J has a foundation, a nonprofit too, where Destiny by Choice. So we all have these things. We're grassroots nonprofits that cater to different pieces of what we've come together to help mold and reshape individuals that they get to another level. So it is a question for the both of you. How do we help someone that's in that situation that's saying it's me? How do we navigate their mindset and empower them to rise up above the situation?
Well, one, I think that, and what was beneficial to me is getting quiet and talking to God, or having a spiritual practice, because that repetition was like also opening up a light for me. And then I would write, who am I? What do I want? Who do I want to be? How do I get there? Every day, who am I? What do I want? How do I be? Who would I want to be? And how do I get there? The more you write that, the more you start to say, well, who am I? Like, what do I want? This is not what I desired in my life. And then there's so many more resources now than there were in the 90s and in the 80s. There are so many groups and organizations all over the city. There's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, where you can call a number. That's right. You can call a number and it won't show up on the internet. If you're Googling it, it won't show up on your they can hide everything for you. You can get a new identity if you need to seclude yourself. There's food available. There's money available for survivors. There are so many things that are in place for you to be able to move forward. You don't have to stay because of finances. You don't have to stay because you got children. Because they have places that accept your children and provide daycare. There are places that will anonymously pick you up from the hospital or emergency room or whatever, and in a secluded car, and take you to a secret location and provide you with a cell phone. So there's so many places and so much resources out there. So once you are in a space where you're like, I'm ready to move, you have to be ready to move. Not go back and get an item, not go back for another conversation. You have to be ready to move and just remove yourself so you can heal. Because you're not good to your children. Because listen, if you have children, you're dealing with abuse, right? And dealing with that trauma. And then you have children that's looking up to you like, help us, help us. And you might project that energy onto them. So to save those kids from a cycle of abuse, you need to start to heal within and figure out ways and connect to people and organizations that help with healing and promote healing and wellness, so that you can be a better parent, you can be a better human being, and that way you don't keep attracting and aligning with people who are needy and energy suckers and vampires. You need someone to pour into you. And you have to be in a space within yourself to be able to attract that.
You know, that is so true in everything that you're saying, and knowing those resources are very important. You know, from my aspect, when I started Destiny by Choice, and that's now 25 years ago now, it's hard to believe, but
Wow.
my main thing then was, and our theme has always been empowering lives, shaping destinies. Well, so it didn't always start from the victim who's right now a victim, but it was also talk about the importance of educating the community, educating in those places that people will understand, because people suffer in silence. They're going through alone. And the thing about it, because domestic violence is non-discriminatory, you got sisters sitting up there with PhDs, masters, and everything else, but they're still victims of domestic violence. And so what's happening inside of it, they're trying to do all they can to stay afloat behind, if you would, the cosmetic of their accomplishment, but yet it's still inside they're dealing with trauma, and that trauma goes untreated, and so inside they're dying. Simply because we don't confront it doesn't mean that it goes away. You're not healed because you avoid. And so our whole concept was this: how do we create not only empowering sessions, how do we be able to reach those areas where education is natural? So I've always tried to go after the faith base, the churches, because it's the most captive place in all society. We have more churches in any community than we have schools, than we have hospitals, than we have fire department, than we have anything. Problem is, when the church doesn't have a message, or when the church is not equipped to deal with folks that are sitting right in their pews, because we have to make up in our mind. Are we really just want folks to come to fill the pew? Are we looking for folks just come to be our cheering section? Yeah, preach it. Are we really about being the spiritual trauma center? Because people are traumatized sitting right up in church. People are traumatized, and if we never give them a message,
some of them are traumatized and mentally abused by their leader.
Exactly. And so we go
the manipulation.
So we have to create that place where a person feel empowered. Going back to what you said you had to say to yourself who I am. You had to remind yourself who you are and those things. If I'm in the church, I have been indoctrinated to being told that, listen here, that, you know, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Well, what does that look like when I'm being beat? You know, I've been told that I'm the apple of God's eye. Well, what's wrong? Because I'm, you know, these.
He got a spoke in his eye. What's going on?
Exactly. And so you're dealing with almost a crisis in your faith, as well as a crisis inside of your abuse. So it's about empowering from that aspect. It's about us as even faith people being able to know what other resources out there. Let's not run from those resources. Let's connect with those resources.
Yeah.
Because guess what? We can be a good triage nurse. We can at least assess those people and send them to the right place to get the help. And that's what's important, because people will overcome. People can overcome. They need guidance. They need to understand. That's why things that you're doing, even with your Noel Roberts Foundation, is important, because sometimes people need to see the after.
Yes.
Yeah. They need to know that there's life after abuse. There's life after trauma. And how do I foster it? And it doesn't mean it's a death sentence because you've been in an abusive relationship. You know, am I now sentenced to never be in a relationship ever again? No. I learned how to foster it by learning my worth, by understanding the fact that I am really fearfully and wonderfully made, and I'm able to navigate through it. So those empowering factors are so greatly important.
And I do want to say this in case anybody was or is like I was at that time. I was because I came from a household of abuse, and then I got into a marriage that was emotionally abusive. When I left the marriage, I was like, you know what? I'm not dating anybody. I'm gonna just raise these kids until they're 18 so they don't have to deal with any type of trauma. And I think that was a mistake. But at the time, I thought that was the best thing, because I have 3 sons and a daughter. I thought that was the best thing for me. That's how I protected me and my family.
Absolutely.
But in the sense of, because I met beautiful men after that, but I was so traumatized that I was not healthy for them. Like it wasn't going to work because I was triggered by so much. If you said something that resembled my ex, or you know, I just was too triggered and it wasn't a healthy relationship. So I decided to raise them on my own, and I kind of robbed them from a 2-parent household. But I think they did well. I think they did. I think they did well.
You know, mine did well too, and I kind of did like you. I wanted to pour into my children and build my career and walk in my purpose.
Yeah.
And when it was that time, God blessed me with a real king that
Yeah.
and covers me.
I'm waiting for my Boaz. Yes.
He was worth the wait. I gotta say he is worth the
I'm glad.
wait, the waiting that I did, because I could have jumped into a lot of relationship because the girl ain't wrapped.
Yeah,
I'm not tore up enough.
You're on the eye, girl. You easy.
But I wanted more.
Yes.
And that's the only thing that I'm really trying to say to those that are listening. You gotta want more for you. Yes, you want more for your children, but you got to want more for you first so that you can pour into them.
Yeah, and even with like moving forward with your life, that writing down or knowing what you want is very important, because when you meet somebody, and you're going to meet different people, when you meet somebody, you know how to strongly and clearly articulate, that's not something that I desire. You know, this is what I'm looking for. And I'm okay if that's not what you want. And, you know, I'll move on. But you can't be desperate. You can't be lonely. You have to know, like, no, I'm going to get what I want. Yeah. And you have to know what it is you want. So when you meet somebody and they're showing up and they're not showing you what you desire or what your match is, then you have to walk away.
Don't settle.
Walk away. Yeah, please don't settle.
You know, it's interesting. It's funny, and as a male, as the male on the panel, it's interesting because the right advice is don't settle, but oftentimes on the reverse side is to how do you become unconditioned? Because there are those that are, because of their abuse, they wear the label of their abuse. I like to say the abuse is what happened to you. It is not you.
Yeah.
And so at some point, you know, when we're talking about being strengthened and being fortified, we have to become strengthened and fortified enough that we don't lose, if you would, our vulnerability. There's no relationship without vulnerability. Period.
Absolutely.
You can't have a relationship. And so what I mean by that is this. Inside of my healing, you know, there are certain non-negotiables that we need to all have, right? There's just certain non-negotiables. You need to be able to identify those non-negotiables. In other words, to be able to identify the stuff a mile away, right? If I see anything look like that, you know, run, Forrest, run. Or better yet, you know, the crucifix or whatever. But on the other hand, you've got to understand, how do I become conditioned that I love myself enough that I can allow myself to be loved again?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a powerful thing.
Yeah,
that's a powerful thing, to be able to, how do I love myself enough that I'm not putting myself in a self-imposed prison where I never open myself up for love again because of what happened to me. And that takes some navigating, but also takes some nurturing. How do I nurture myself? How do I get to that place where I do my homework, that I'm healthy now and I'm ready to receive? Right? Because can you admit, I think in your own story and both of your story, you can say that's a certain degree of naivety that I did not know. That's a certain degree of lack of life experience when I went through that first thing. But what have life taught me now? How have I nurtured? Because I didn't just go through, I grow through.
Yeah, that's right. I have lived, as I say. I've learned some things. I'm more in a better place now than I was. I am open to love. I'm not, if I meet somebody that doesn't work out, I'm okay. And I'm open to the next person. And I'm not taking that baggage from the last person and saying, oh, you might do this, you might. No. What do you have to share with me? What is your life experience? Like, I'm so open that it's scary.
So in other words, you're not holding the current person hostage to what the previous person was.
No.
And that's important inside of navigating inside of healthy relationships, because I'll say this to you, you know, loneliness loneliness could be chronic. Yeah, loneliness can be chronic. It can be depressing. But loneliness doesn't have to be, when we understand the fact that I'm not lonely because I'm not worthy. I'm not lonely because I'm not sufficient. I'm not lonely because I don't have. And so when we can kind of get to that place of healthiness that way, it strengthens us to be able to go to and have the courage to say, listen, I'm not out of this thing. Kind of like what Dr. Val said a few minutes ago. Said not that they wasn't coming back on the girl. Look like what she's been through.
I've never been lonely. And I think that's part due to I'm an optimistic human being, and I've never felt lonely because I'm very comfortable alone. But I know there are some people who cannot be alone, and they have to really work on themselves, because God forbid if someone leaves or they're distraught, and that they have to figure out what's that trigger, like what trauma happened where they can't be separate from someone, and that allows people to stay and creates that toxic relationship. But you have to be comfortable being alone. It doesn't mean that you're lonely, but you're alone. You have to like yourself. You have to like the company that you keep. And I love the company that I keep. I love myself.
And that's not vanity. That's just confidence.
It's self-love. It's self-love. That's right. It's self-love. And it was taken away, and it came back, and it came back strong. And I was like, I'm never letting you go. Never.
Well, one of the things that will help individuals to really get free is to take ownership of the situation, where you are, how did you get there? Because we played a part in what happened. We participated in the story. So once we take ownership of where it is, then we don't have to worry about the outside people telling us about ourselves and holding the mirror up to us all the time saying, look what you did, or look, how could you do this and stuff. Own your own space. And be willing to embrace the journey that's going to be ahead. And part of embracing that journey is loving yourself. Now, loving yourself don't mean hair and nails and all that. Loving yourself meaning I'm comfortable in my skin. I don't need anyone to validate me.
And it could be as simple as, did you eat today, girl?
Yes.
Let me eat the right foods. Let me drink the right fluids and liquids. Let me take the right vitamins. Let me exercise.
Absolutely.
Like caring for you as you would care for that person you were so in love with.
Your rescue.
That's right. You are your rescue. You are your own rescue. Absolutely.
And be willing to navigate through the process. It's not going to be easy, because it wasn't easy getting into that situation. It kept building and building until you were locked in. So it's going to be a process unraveling all this, but be willing to go through the navigation. And, these topics that I've been choosing, I used to do retreats every year.
Yeah, I just mentioned that the other
From
day.
the soulofawoman.com is my website. I keep forgetting to mention I do have a foundation and a website. The topics that I come up with, how to win, in healthy relationships. Dr. D talked about purpose never dies, and Fallon, who talked about you're enough. These winning statements that I want individuals to embrace, whether you be a man or woman, embrace this. And these messages, this is part of my ministry, because I haven't done my retreats where I used to have men in one session and the women in the other, and you talk real talk. It was the same.
Boy, did we ever talk real talk?
Yeah, the men really loved it, because the men never had a voice. They didn't. They always thought to, man up. And Dr. J, you came to a couple of the events, and it was really a powerful session, and it made it better for them going home to their wives, because they had their eyes were open to things that sometimes men just don't get it.
They don't, yeah.
They don't get it. They don't function or think like we do.
They're very logic. They're very
So
logical.
this platform that I created was to be an extension of that, to give information in hopes it will set someone free.
Yeah.
So this is the purpose of this platform. This is still ministry. I'm still helping. I'm still sowing into the lives of individuals because I want you free.
Yes. Yeah. And hopefully you don't have to go through something to have to learn how to get back to yourself. And you having the retreats, and we're having a wellness. So this one's because it's Women History Month. We're doing it for women. So it's a retreat on this Saturday and next Saturday in Philadelphia. And we do yoga and sound bath and exercise. We have a doctor speaking about wellness. So just how to care for yourself. And once you get in a routine of caring for yourself, it's a little bit harder for something or someone on the outside to come and chip away at your esteem and your self-worth. So the stronger you are, and we keep preparing you and Doc, we keep preparing people for this, the men and the women, it'll be harder for an outside source to come and tear them down. So we have to work on both ends. You know what I mean? We help them navigate and we help build.
So how do people want, if they want to participate and come to this wellness retreat, how can they connect with you?
In Philadelphia, you can go. It's on Eventbrite. It's called Women Wellness Series. But it's also, you can go onto our Instagram page at Noel Roberts Foundation, and you can just sign up.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, these are the type things that are so needed. We always talk about taking your pain, and out of your pain, you birth power and purpose, and you begin to shape people's lives. One of the greatest things we can do is learn to adapt. Life is about adaptation. We do. If we don't adapt, we die. It's just simple as that. And so we cannot die. We cannot afford to die in our last tragedy, in our last trauma. We must adapt, move on, gather the things that we need to, because still where we're being called to is greater than where we're being called from.
That's right. That's right. I like that.
Absolutely. Like that. We're wrapping up the show. Noel, you have any closing remarks to empower individuals how to win?
Winning and fostering healthy relationships is starting with yourself and building up and pouring into yourself, and then moving forward and attracting the life you desire, because it's possible.
Absolutely. Dr. J?
Listen, once again, we have to understand this. We learn from what we go through. Understand, change is necessary. There's no growth without change. There's no change without loss. There's no loss without pain.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in and joining us on Hot Topics from the Soul. And remember to subscribe and like and share. Until the next time. Hot topics from the soul. Hot topics from the soul.